Hey everyone, it's Miggity Mashed Potatoes here, and Portal is a pretty good game. I feel like most people, at least gamer people, know this. Even if they haven't played Portal, they know it's good, because I didn't even play Portal until like a year ago, but I always knew it was good. And luckily, that crowd of people will get the chance to play it when the Companion Collection releases in 2022 for the newer consoles. Wait a minute. I'm not gonna hold you guys. Since last year, I've been looking for a way to talk about it on my channel, and I played the game about 3 or 4 times now since then, which isn't a lot since the game's only about 2 or 3 hours, at most 4 or 5 if you're kinda dumb, like me. But it does speak to how fun the experience is. The main draw is the gameplay itself. You shoot one door on the wall, you shoot another door on the wall, you pop out one and come out the other. It works alongside momentum-based puzzles to make conundrums that aren't just satisfying to solve, but a lot of fun to pull off. The game's also known for its storytelling, which is pretty admirable considering how little of it there is. It's not minimalist or speechless, but the game doesn't use a lot of assets to convey its story, with only one person who ever says anything important in the environments themselves, which shift between 3 types mostly. These means of storytelling don't just deliver the narrative, but also create the thing that surprised me the most about Portal when first playing it: its atmosphere. The tone, mood, and feeling created and conveyed through the game's sounds, sights, and story is best described as darkly humorous, or humorously dark, or maybe dark and humorous separately, but I think the points are clear. I was not expecting this game to be as funny or as eerie as it is, but I'm glad that it is because I think it's my favorite part of this game specifically. Portal 2 is a better game in just about every conceivable way. The base game is bigger, not to mention an entire multiplayer campaign, more puzzles, more ways to solve puzzles, more story, more ways to communicate that story, and more funnies within that story. But the dreadful feeling of the original was lost, which doesn't make the game worse, but was really important to that last experience, which reminds me of something. I don't know, I can't put my finger on it. You start the game in a very cozy looking cage, surrounded by a room that reflects the first and most common type of environment in the game: the test chambers. Bleak white floors and walls surround you, illuminated by lights with a hint of blue as you go through floor after floor of test. There's a lack of personality or expression that counteractively gives it a presence, a haunting one at that, a feeling of complete emptiness and loss in these voidless rooms. But then, GLaDOS talks, and her voice is able to take that established fear.
Hello, and again, welcome to the Aperture Science Computer Aided Enrichment Center.
And completely accentuate it. But she does become charming after a little while. In her own way, GLaDOS represents the entire atmosphere of this game, the dark and humorous thing I was talking about. On one hand, she's terrifying. Her distorted robotic voice alongside the deadpan performance makes for a character you can never truly relax around, which sucks because she's always around. But there's also a quirkiness to her, as she constantly lets sarcastic remarks slip through, and makes it clear that she's always looking down on you, figuratively and literally. But she's looking so far down that she can't actually see anything, not only making her sound silly sometimes, but also letting us know that she doesn't fully understand how people work. If anything, she is one of the most lovable antagonists in video games, and that aspect of her went against my better judgment and lured me into a slight sense of comfort, but never fully, and that's because of those rooms. Throughout every test chamber, there will be small openings in the walls, working as windows for spectator rooms. It's pretty obvious that you're a test subject. GLaDOS is open about that much, and having people watching you is naturally creepy. But what's even more disturbing is that no one's there. No one is ever there. The rooms are always lit and organized the same, but there's no hint of anyone ever being there. There hasn't been a hint of anybody besides GLaDOS and yourself. The fear of being trapped and watched is one thing, but on top of that, the fear of being alone makes it another thing entirely. With that in mind, you start noticing smaller details also along the walls. Despite their manufactured uniformity, they're musty and dusted, less in a dirty sense and more along an old, abandoned feeling. As the puzzles progress, they don't only become more taxing, but also increase in stakes. The energy balls can be reasoned. They're dangerous but required to power and progress the test, so it's necessary. But what's the reasoning behind the toxic acid pit you can fall into? They really had to go out of their way to install something like that, instead of just putting water and adding a ladder near the start of the puzzle. You think she's trying to kill you or something. This is ridiculous. GLaDOS most likely detects the rising suspicions and promises a reward. A special reward. A reward that will drive our motivations for the rest of the game.
Cake.
Look, I know the joke died like a decade ago, but I just got here and I'ma have some fun, okay? Let me be. But the promise of cake also calls the acid pits and killer turns back into question. GLaDOS says that the possibility of death proves as a strong motivation for completion, but the promise of cake throws that excuse out the window. What does not melting or being shot down to death do as an incentive that cake doesn't? I think we all know what's really pushing us ahead here. Putting myself aside for a second, let's focus on the robots here. Looking past their murderous intent and dual-wielding machine guns, these seem like fairly friendly programs that are just overwhelmingly sad. If this is a constant among the robots in this facility, we need to seriously start analyzing the possibility of abusive employee treatment in workspaces. Oh, you gotta be kidding. It doesn't just seem to be the robots either, because the writing on this one wall suggests that the humans weren't very happy here either. This is pretty sus, GLaDOS. Let me stop fucking joking around for a second and say that this was the most important part of my first playthrough. I was just kinda having fun the first time around, playing with the portals and laughing at GLaDOS, but this is when the atmosphere completely grabbed my attention and refused to let go, making me crave the answers for what the hell was going on here. It introduces a second type of environment that you'll be going through later on. The inside of the walls are completely opposed to the outside, with the light blues replaced with harsh reds, uniformed walls and floors replaced with cement, grates, and pipes. The industrial aesthetic creates the feeling that nothing here is maintained or looked after, besides the functions these rooms are made to run. Despite that, it also feels safe. This seems to be a place that escapes the view of GLaDOS, giving others the chance to wind down and warn us. There's the writing on the walls, presumably from other testers like yourself, giving you a mixed bag of messages. Some illegible, some clear as day, some cryptic, and some possible truths too hard to accept. Anyways, we progress towards the very real cake and end up at test 17, and that's when we're introduced to the weighted companion cube. It's a cube. Doesn't talk or anything. It's pretty cool. You go through this elongated puzzle with cube, deflecting energy balls, sitting on buttons, opening doors, killing yourself accidentally. Then, you reach the end of it all. You two have birthed a bond stronger than blood, formed and fortified a friendship. Maybe something much more. Then this bitch makes you kill it! This part really stands out in GLaDOS' character, and really calls it into question. You specifically have to kill your cube here. You obviously can't move her through the portal, but she never makes you destroy any other cube. And you're not allowed to leave it to just live its best life. And she makes you fucking incinerate it. She specifically made it thinking we'd form an attachment, and again, it's funny because she thinks we actually care about a box. Like, that'll never happen. But then, it's just to make us throw it into a fire. She genuinely thinks she's performing mental torment here. That's some masochistic shit. On top of that, there's another back room here with messages saying she's trying to kill me or something. Like, what am I supposed to make of that? This was a heartbreaking moment that made it much harder to ever trust GLaDOS again. I was really just hoping the cake would make me feel better. So we finally reached the finale here. We're supposed to be heading towards cake, but at this point you probably got some doubts. Using critical thinking and context clues, most players can probably start to assume that GLaDOS isn't telling the whole truth here. Players that are a little ahead of the curve may even start thinking GLaDOS is out against the player in some shape or form. You know what though? I'm gonna decide to trust her. Where's the fucking food? Anyways, you decide not to die and start looking for the goddamn cake, which leads you headfirst into the industrial areas of the game. Machinery pounds through the place as GLaDOS becomes increasingly worried at not knowing where you are or what you're doing. The harsh reds hinted at behind the extending platform start to completely dominate the surrounding area. GLaDOS pushes back with full force, deploying a number of turrets, and I mean, they're trying their best. A for effort. There are also more messages to run into, some pointing you in the direction that you're supposed to head to, as it's clear that some of this terrain you're going through has only been made possible through other subjects' attempts. There's an air of sadness to the dread, as the repetition of the writings make it clear that, while we never learn what happened to these people, some of them definitely lost their minds and probably never made it out. There's actually this one line from GLaDOS that sticks out in my mind specifically.
You are not a good person. Where you
You know
are,
that, right?
I get lost.
Good people don't end up here.
Sleep mode activated.
I wasn't really thinking about it before, as she never really talks, but it got me thinking about who this woman I'm playing as is, and how she got in this predicament in the first place. All of this was just theorizing on my part as I originally played through the game. I did end up looking into all of this, and my predictions were dead-ass wrong, but that's okay because the truth is actually a lot creepier. But most of the truth is revealed in Portal 2 and content outside of the main games. The original Portal didn't really offer any context back in 2007, leaving people just to speculate like I did. You continue progressing and run into the third type of area. It's a few short trips, but I think it's some of the most impactful moments in the entire game. You finally get to explore those rooms that kept you on edge throughout your playthrough for so long, and it's an office building. Definitely an office building. Toast! As soon as I entered this area, I felt an instinctive kind of fear. One that's really hard to explain to Google, so I'll try here. Think about going to school or an office every day. Every day you go to the same classes, walk through the same routes, and grow very familiar with the place and the areas surrounded. But one day you stay there a lot later than you're supposed to, or God forbid you go to Saturday school. It's the same place, it's familiar, but completely different than it usually is. The bustling hallways are now dead, nothing but a string of long paths and doors. The entire place is completely dimmed and grayed and lifeless. This place you should know like the back of your hand is completely alien and desolate, and again, you're alone. You step into the teacher's lounge, a place that's always been off limits. It's not as cool as you imagined. It looks mostly like the rest of this place, but that doesn't matter because you're completely out of bounds. And despite thinking you know this building, turns out you didn't know anything. Eventually, within there, you discover the horrifying truth. The truth that the teacher's lounge has had a vending machine this entire time. This completely foreign object that you don't associate with school at all has been sitting here while you've been drinking water from the sink disguised as a fountain, and the same milk from day one that's been expired half the time. The teachers have been hogging a whole ass vending machine in here. Got a little off topic there, but that's every feeling of dread this place specifically installs in me. It's like the opposite effect of the backrooms, where those are places that are familiar despite never seeing them or being there before. This place is unfamiliar, despite having seen it a multitude of times throughout your playthrough. Even the out-of-place vending machine is here, except in the form of a fucking turn that shoots missiles. You finally reach GLaDOS, and the room is circular, and dark, and scary. It's a fine moment that starts out funny, gets a little creepy as GLaDOS prepares to flood the room with neurotoxins, but back to funny as you avenge your cube by dumping GLaDOS's feeling cores into the incinerator, causing her to start flipping out. The room is destroyed, GLaDOS dies, except not really, and you're launched to the surface. The game ends. Except not really! Yeah, it turns out there was cake. It was right there, the entire time, waiting for you. Cube is alive and made it back. There were even a bunch of cool robot people who were waiting to celebrate with you. I love how this ending completely recontextualizes everything we just went through and puts everything we thought we figured out back into question. Was Cube really avenged, or did we just betray it by killing its mom over the purpose that it itself accepted? Was GLaDOS really the villain, or were her homicidal tendencies just her social disposition as an AI program? Does this game really have a dreadful atmosphere, or was that fear inside of us fueled as an excuse to act out on our own selfish desires? As you sit back in the new main menu, think about who the real bad guy of this story was. Again, we obviously know what really went down here, but it was probably pretty interesting back in the day to think about it. Thank you for watching.